minutes late. We're trying to improve. Today is a very important day because it's not just a discussion on gender-based violence. It is an opportunity to make sure that victims aren't just statistics. Every time, including yesterday in another police briefing, I hear numbers, and I hear thousands, and I hear arrests, but I don't hear victims' names being said. I don't hear or see the victims having an opportunity or a platform where they can share the stories of how they have been affected by these things. So today is not about Action Society. I'm going to come to Lucinda now. And it's not about Philisa Abafazi. Today is a day where we give an opportunity for a person who was a victim, who in my opinion is now a very brave warrior, to share a story on behalf of so many others. The reason I find this so important, and again, this is not going to be a political discussion, is that just yesterday I heard a comment from a police management side that at least someone wasn't raped by more than one man. I think it's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace that we've come to a point in South Africa where we not only speak of bad murders or good murders, we speak of bad rapes or good rapes. So it's better to be raped by one person than to be gang raped. It's an atrocity. The fact that we speak about all these arrests being made, but we've got less than a 5%, let that sink in, 5% successful conviction rate for sexual offences in South Africa is an atrocity. If to place that into context, if you've got 100 rapes and only 5% of those suspects that are arrested are successfully convicted, it means that 95 rapists will walk free. 95 out of 100 will walk free. That is the reality of rape and sexual offences in South Africa. So for today, we're going to share or give Janelle Laattoe an opportunity to share her story. Before we get to that, I think it's important to give a little bit of context as to what the gender-based violence picture looks like in South Africa. I think it's often underestimated how serious it really is. Every year we hear statistics, we see crime stats, and we know things are bad. But unfortunately, the large majority of these statistics are actually a conservative amount, or is a conservative number of the reality on the ground. A few years ago, I think it was the Institute for Security Studies, I might be mistaken, it's 3 or 4 years ago, it comes to mind now, that they shared that only 1 in 9 rapes are actually reported. So the figure that we have of between 130 and 150 rapes per day is actually far higher. And I think that's what worries me so much, is that people are terrified of it. Now, before I get into these stats, why do we also want to share this? Today is part of a larger expose on how victims actually become crime fighters when they don't get the treatment that they need in the criminal justice system. And we're going to show that to you shortly. I want to share this with you, and this comes from the South African Police Service, specifically stats from 2022. All of you have probably seen these stats, but it's good for context's sake. Place of occurrence is usually the residence of the perpetrator. We've seen this many a time. Often bodies are removed from there, and if someone is unfortunately murdered, and they are then dumped somewhere else. Often they are found at that residence, and then obviously the necessary processes follow. Murder, 1,350 of 5,226. Attempted murder, 1,197 out of 4,000. And I think then rape, that's very important, is specifically to say that more than half of them occur at the place of residence of the perpetrator. And then selected contact crimes against women is incredibly high. And the one I want to focus on there is the one with assault GBH. And the reason why I single assault GBH out is because assault GBH very often leads to all the other crimes. It is the one where they try to kill someone. It is the one, and Janelle's going to share her story now, where it leads to something like that. It is the one where it becomes rape. It is the one where it becomes sexual assault and all the other horrific lists of things that can occur. Now, in October, a short while ago, there was a research report that's come over the years from the South African Medical Research Council, and it's the one that I find the most relevant to give us an indication of the criminal justice system when it comes to these types of offences. It gives us a picture of how we are failing in terms of conviction, arrests, and the entire criminal justice cycle. Firstly, half of the referred cases when it comes to sexual offences that are referred to prosecutors are declined, half of them. So that means they can't go ahead with prosecution because the investigation or some other process isn't successful. Early victim withdrawal makes it very difficult because of intimidation. People are intimidated on ground level. They can't speak up because of what might happen to them. And you'd be surprised how many a time the abuse or the offense that happens within a family. And when it happens in that family, the actual family of the victim end up protecting the perpetrator and deny the victim the opportunity to speak out. Then obviously the prosecutorial decision making is influenced by the investigation. Now just this morning again, I want to refer to the Krugersdorp case. We hear that there is still no DNA link. And this is very important because last year this time we had a 300,000 case backlog with regards to DNA and the forensic labs in South Africa. 300,000 cases. Remember, per case it's an average of about 4 pieces of evidence. If you take 4 pieces of evidence, times that by 300,000, it's more than 1.2 million pieces of evidence that need to be processed. Okay. In May of 2022, it was 56,000, the backlog. I don't know what it has been since. But why now suddenly, when it happens that there are cameras on the case in Krugersdorp, there's a priority to fast-track DNA? We've got cases in the Cape Flats where they are scrapped from the roll because of DNA reports not being available. How is that possible? How is it possible that the perpetrator that raped, dismembered, and killed Chantal Makwena in Rocklands in PE, he dumped her in a pit toilet, she was 4 years old, it took 2 years for the DNA report to be released. 2 years that man could continue doing the things that he was doing. I want to continue. According to the Medical Research Council, less than 1 in 5 cases make it to trial. 1 in 5 cases. Those are only the ones that actually reach court. Remember, many of them don't reach, and that's apart from cases that are withdrawn from the police. Over 1/10 of perpetrators in cases with trial proceedings pleaded guilty. It's a very, very small amount. 1 in 12 cases concluded with a guilty conviction, and again, those are the ones that actually make it through the prosecution process. And then obviously, the sentencing of rape perpetrators varies. Last week we had a case in Khayelitsha where Action Society is currently involved, where someone was beaten into hospital. It's a severe GBV related case, domestic violence case, and the perpetrator was granted bail, 2,000 rand bail, and he's back out on the street. He lives just around the corner from the victim. And it's a case, I'm not going to go into detail about a case, it's a case in the Wineland, similar, exactly the same thing happened last year, released on bail, assault GBH, 3 weeks later the victim was murdered by that same person. And lastly, before we continue for the real reason we are here today, it's important to give some context as to the last report. It was 2 weeks ago, that the Commission for Gender Equality biannual SAPS report was released. And it's important to say that this report wasn't released to bash SAPS. Because I tell you now that there are thousands of amazing members that still wear that uniform with pride and that do incredible work with limited resources. But leadership is severely broken, and that's where we need to address this problem. What they shared during this report, and you can go look it up, this is just a small highlight of that. They focused specifically from March to September from 2021. They said the following: South Africa's reported rape cases remain among the highest globally, with more than 134 cases per 100,000 reported to the police. On average, more than 50,000 people are serviced per police station, a large proportion of domestic violence cases in courts were withdrawn. Just a short while ago, we had a case, and Janelle will share more, similar to hers, close to here, and where we are in the Cape Flats, where a victim was told, sorry, you just remember a lot of paperwork has to be done to open this case. Are you sure you want to go ahead with it? Delays in forensic laboratories. I've already mentioned most of that, but the delay in DNA results and ballistic reports affects cases massively. Many of them are scrapped from the roll because of these reports not being available. Now you've got a fantastic detective. He or she is already under massive pressure with more than 300 dockets on their table, and they really are trying, but they don't have the support or the capacity that they need from senior leadership. Then lastly, the dedicated GBV coordinators that we need at SAPS. Just yesterday in the police briefing, we heard about the 90,000 people that were trained. It's a blatant lie. I go to these police stations, and most of the time, we have an A4 paper. Sorry, Janelle, I just want to steal this quickly. A4 paper stuck on a door that says GBV or GBV Center, and then when you open the door, it's a storeroom. And then when you speak to some of the members at those stations, they tell you they don't have the resources to do what they need to do, and they are at a point that they actually want to start doing mediation because they don't have the capacity to support the community the way they should. I'm going to stop there. I think you have the context. I want to give Janelle an opportunity to share a letter that she wrote, and then we will continue from there. Janelle.
Okay, so I'm Janelle, and listening to Ian and him mentioning all the numbers, it's heartbreaking to know I'm one of that numbers. And he mentioned about, that there's no dedicated people, especially to GBV at police stations. I was victim of that too. I walked into a police station and a female didn't even want to take my statement. She told me that, but usually you guys withdraw the case. Like, I was even told at one occasion where, no, just open up the internet, like you'll be okay. It's sad, it really, really is. So this is my story, and yeah, I'm very grateful that I'm even given the platform to voice, because I've been silent since 2018, basically, and yeah, I do apologize for the easy shiver in my voice. So yeah. Dear Minister Cele and President Ramaphosa, today I stand before you not as a victim of domestic violence, but as a survivor. I say this because many women in my position never lived to tell the tale. If you open up a newspaper, you will see there's women being killed. It's always by their partners. And if you look at the history, sometimes it's cases that was reported. The people, they get released on bail. These men come back to finish what they started. But yeah, this is my story. So for 3 years, I was in a relationship that turned sour. And as a result, I endured pain. I endured every form of abuse. It was mental, physical, emotional, everything. I had my arm crushed to a point where I needed ligament reconstruction. I have a metal plate in my arm because of that. I needed dental work done because of the impact on my mouth. I have permanent scars on my body from being dragged down a tar road. I have a scar on this arm where he tried to burn my face with a soldering iron. And even after all of this, it's years later, it's like that scars are still there. You have to deal with not only the physical abuse, but everything after that. And where's the support? There's no support. The police can tell you, we have these facilities available, but is it really? We see posters up of how, the support is there and everything. That has nothing to protect us as women. I'm here. I know so many women who also fall victim to this. Some women are even scared to go forward. Some of them know, what's the point I open up a case if justice is not going to be served? I had a friend tell me that she was abused. She broke her arm as well. And she told me she didn't want to go through the process because of what happened to me. Because she saw how my case was dragged out to a point where years later, I still didn't receive my justice. She didn't want to go through that. And me, also didn't have the support. Now I am grateful. I have people on my side that's even giving me a platform to voice my opinion and voice what happened to me. So I'm not here as just my story, but for every other woman who had to experience this. So I remembered all, his anger, his rage, his obsession looking down on me, my fractured fingers trying to cover my face, my bloody fingerprints on the door as I tried to leave many a times, and the metal taste of blood in my mouth, the cold grip of his hands around my throat, the kicks to my stomach, and me praying to God that this nightmare is going to end. But my nightmare didn't end there. After this, my battle had to continue. It continued with the police, the law, the justice system that vowed to protect and serve women. You know, as children, we are taught, you know, the police are there to help us. They're here to guide you. They're here to protect you. But what? We walk into a police station for assistance. You know, we want that support, even if it's from a woman, even if it's just someone there to counsel you through the process. But everything is completely formal. You're sitting there, I'm here to take your statement, and that is it. I mean, you were so vulnerable in that state. You just want someone to understand you, to just be there for you. Like, you know, I can relate, but it's not like that. It's not at all. They told me I must get an interdict, and I did that. After the interdict was served to him, he came to my house and he told me, do you think a piece of paper is going to keep me away? Do you think a piece of paper is going to stop me from doing what I actually want to do? It doesn't. I had to endure postponed court dates for over a year. Over a year. In and out. And then I had to learn that my docket disappeared. My docket is missing. Court, they even provisionally withdrew my case because they wanted to get further statements from me in order to get a more broader aspect of the abuse, because it wasn't just one occasion, it was many occasions. Only through this process did I learn I was actually raped, because I didn't consent to it. And you know, for me, growing up, you kind of believe that your partner, if it's your partner, it's not rape. You know, like how do you report something, it's your boyfriend, it's your husband, it's rape. You didn't consent. And my abuser walked free. He walked free. And after this, it led him to abuse 3 additional women. One woman ended up in hospital. The other woman's face was fractured in 3 different places. And the other woman, he jumped over a high gate to get to her, to gunpoint her. So, with all of this that happened to me, how is women supposed to perceive the justice system, or how things are, you know? And my perpetrator, he continued his life. I had to go to doctors, I had a sleeping disorder, I had to deal with my PTSD, I had to deal with everything else that came afterwards. And, you know, to the president, you know, this is a problem. 8 women were raped last week. And you see communities across the country live in fear. We heard from Comrade Becky Tele just a minute ago about, you know, West Village. It's a manifestation of how gender-based violence crimes, it spreads. And I'm really hoping that this conference comes up with ways to, you know, how to support women. Women across the country, we live in fear. Like I mentioned before about the posters, that is everywhere. We see the purple posters, we see it on, you know, the boxes on, you know, on the tea, we see it everywhere. But what does it do to protect us as women? And also to Becky Chile, why is it only when there's a camera on him that all of a sudden, you know, something is happening, something is being done? Why? And you know, this justice system, we get lenient sentencing, there's negligence in terms of my docket that just disappeared. There's few convictions, as Ian mentioned. And this is our reality. And I'm really angered, I'm extremely angered that the justice system failed me. You know, I opened up my case. I opened up my case because I knew what this man was capable of. And I wasn't heard. I wasn't heard. And you went And he continued because he had no consequences for his actions. He saw that he can do this to a woman and he could still walk free. Nothing was going to happen to him. 3 additional women, not just me. There was more before me, more after me. But if something was done, when I spoke up, this wouldn't have happened. This wouldn't have happened. Someone could have lost their life. And I'm someone's daughter. It can be any one of you guys' daughters, mothers, sisters, that has to go through things like this. And all this because of the hands of a man. And again, I want to publicly thank Action Society for everything that you guys have done for me. Like, I felt at the point where everything was on a standstill, and now there's actually progress in everything. The phone calls that I received, the follow-ups, the checkups, the support from you guys at court. It's amazing the work that you guys do. So I just want to end off with saying that this is not how my story is going to end. Thank you.
So, now, sorry, I'm going to go through a lot of the case again, as you know. Janelle's docket is missing now. And you call the police several times, Delft Police Station, once again Delft Police Station. You call, and what do we get? A shrug. That's the answer we get. Sorry, someone else had it. And then the person who says they had it said no, they gave it to someone else. Docket wasn't scanned as it was meant to have been. The last statement that Janelle made was also not scanned. There's no record of that. You made that one in January, eh?
In January.
Also not done. So is there really an effort to sort this out, or is it just lip service? And I want to go through this timeline. The incident occurred October 2018. In September 2019, the first case was opened with the South African Police Service. The suspect was then arrested for the first time and made several court appearances. And I'm not even going to speak about the intimidation that happened at court. December 2021, the matter was provisionally withdrawn, and the reason was to obtain more medical reports and to provide additional statements. That additional statement is also missing now. January 2022, Janelle gives all the documentation to the investigating officer. She followed most of this up by herself at the beginning. Just remember that. So again, it's not a matter of being served. You literally need to spend your own personal time to try and just get an answer on basic law enforcement matters. She makes inquiries, but the case never returns to the court roll. Janelle then finds out that the suspect assaulted 2 other women. The suspect was arrested again in 2022 and denied bail. April 2022, Janelle asked for feedback with no results. May 2022, Janelle speaks to the investigating officer and insists that the case be put back on the roll, but it did not happen. 12 July 2022, Janelle reaches out to Action Society. 13 July 2022, 3 calls are made to the police station with no feedback or results. A physical visit to the Delft Police Station. The SAPS members cannot find the docket. They promised to give feedback, no feedback was given. A week later, on the 18th of July, 5 calls were made to the police station. No feedback, no results. Again, a physical visit to the Delft Police Station. The docket is still missing. The original detective is on leave until 21 July 2022. 21 July comes, 4 calls are made to the police station with no result, no feedback. The 5th call to the station, the original detective cannot find the docket, mentions that the brigadier asked for the docket and never returned it. The previous SAPS member told Janelle that the brigadier confirmed he returned the docket. Then comes 26 July 2022, 2 calls to the station with no feedback. We saw made screenshots just to show the amount of calls made to Delft Police Station, to give you an idea of how much and how often one calls and there's just 0 feedback. Someone's not on leave, you just don't get any form of return. I now want to hand over to Lucinda Evans, and I want to thank Lucinda for the short time that I've known you. Lucinda and I may differ on some things. I don't know what we differ on yet, but we differ on some things. But if there's one thing about Lucinda that stands out for me, it's the fact that she speaks fearlessly. And I honestly think, regardless of our differences, I heard a lot of things about myself the last few weeks, and regardless of the differences people may have, we need to bring these or keep these leaders to account. We need to keep them responsible, and I think Lucinda has led that way for a very long time. Lucinda.
Thank you, Ian. And maybe I should just tell everyone that there is no political affiliations between Lucinda Evans as the activist or Philisa Abafazi Bethu that is the host today. I am triggered by one of our audience here, and I feel you. I see you at the back. I see you. I see how your partner is clutching your hand, and I want to make reference to your partner if it's okay. It is the good men that are in this press brief that we are needing. Because I'm beyond, sometimes rape is, it's just another rape. It's okay that you wouldn't rape by 10 men but only 1 man. It's okay. It's not okay. The narrative in the fact that an official would make that statement puts thousands and thousands of victims of rape. They are still victims because there has been no justice. And to make that statement, and so in 2019, the 1 Billion Rising Women's Movement marched to Pretoria. We marched to the head office of the police services. We handed over a memorandum to the head of the police and the civilian, National Secretariat, not civilian, National Secretariat of the police. And we highlighted the following. As a movement, we self-funded. We went to Pretoria and we said, the victim support rooms, Janelle, you make mention of it. If somebody in that police station just showed me a little bit compassion, guided me what I needed to do, what the next step is. And we went there with the hand of partnership to the South African Police Services and the National Secretariat, who is the oversight body to police stations. We did it nationally because we said do an audit in all of the police stations in the Western Cape, all of it. We went further and we spoke to the provincial secretariat and we said that in key police stations, Mumfeleni police station is a police station that I want to shed today my light on. A woman sat with a baby in that police station over 8 hours on a bench last week. Before intervention happened, before somebody called me and I started calling in the middle of the night for her to get from point of police station to an emergency safe house. The baby was just 6 weeks old. If we fast forward and we ask what happened to that memorandum, it even appeared before the portfolio committee of the police in the province. And there were fundamental promises made. If I come to 2022 and I ask you please go to Sutherland Police Station in the Northern Cape, just go there. There's no victim support room. The station is battling. 160 kilometers they have to drive to Calvinia to take a survivor of rape. If the rape happened in Sutherland, they have to drive to Calvinia Police Station because there is no forensic nurse based at the clinic that could provide that service. So 160 kilometers on a grondpad and 160 kilometers back. Let's calculate that in time for a survivor. When she comes back to Sutherland, she can take a shower. Let's speak about one of the cases in the Old Apostolic Church 4 years ago. Alleged perpetrator of rape. 2 cases. It came to the light, 18-year-old, this person touched her inappropriately. His court sentencing for the first case was 18 months suspended sentence, house arrest. But it gets interesting. It gets interesting that the Department of Correctional Services never really checked on him because he was a priest in that church. Part of his sentencing is that he should have never been or should not be in any churches. He just relocated in another community away from Lavender Hill. and it's merely he's enjoying his life. Our second victim, after more than a year of postponement, we are still awaiting, up until today, the date for the next case. Let me take you to Pretoria North Police Station. A woman that identifies as lesbian walks in the police station with a torn shirt. The police officer tells her, go back and bring me the evidence that you were raped. And then I asked the question today. I said to Ian, I will not wear black in Women's Month. 1956, the women of this country was part, they added, they supported the freedom of this country. But the women of 2022 is forgotten. We are forgotten, we are not protected, we are not safe. And the genocide on our vaginas is continuously unabated. And I use the word genocide because if you rape a person, the person inside dies. The person dies. It is genocide. And yet, as our known colleague, friend to many in the music industry, still out on R1,000 bail, still postponed, the community is gagged, we may not say his name. This is the situation that we are sitting with in the country. It is deeper that women in this country, we have no voice. We have no one advocating for us. And so if Ian Cameron, if it's okay to say, a man, happens to be white, challenges gender-based violence, we are slapped with historical trauma. And then my question, as a black woman, I ask, but what about the accountability to women in this country in 2022? And so I want to say, in my own capacity, as a person that's non-partisan, the women of 2022, we need to mobilize ourselves to be ready for 2024. We need to. That is, if some of us are still alive at that time. Not raped, not murdered, not hijacked. If we are still alive. But it cannot be that rape is prioritized in the response of the leaders of this country. It cannot. Rape is rape. We cannot accept when people say, oh, but what were the Krugersdorp girls wearing? To the rape apologists, we hear you. We hear you loud. Then my question back to you, what was the baby wearing? What was the woman in Parda wearing? What was the grandmother wearing? When you question what the girls were wearing. And to our president, you lied to us in 2019. You lied to us. 20,000 women at the march, and I stood next to you, Mr. President, and you said there will be no bail for perpetrators. Let's fast forward to 2022. How many perpetrators are out there walking our streets and re-offending, re-abusing? Here is a case. It's not even, it's the present. There are 3 other women. There is an alleged perpetrator. And these men get free. And so I want to say to the good men out there, look beyond this man. And I'm not here to advocate for him at all, because he needs to do what he needs to do. As a man in this country that is brave to say, I'm going to walk the journey. We need the men to walk with us as women. It is out of control. Violence against persons in this country, including the LGBTQIA+, including the lesbian women that were sent. I hope, and I'm going to make contact with that client, we need to take that Pretoria police station to task. In fact, we should actually open a one-on-one complaint against the Minister of Police. but more so, the families of victims in this country should hold the government of this country accountable. We should take them to the Constitutional Court. We should. And what I want to say to the women across this country, I make a reference to a woman that started a campaign called Say His Name. She mentioned her perpetrator's name. And then she was taken to court. And then she won the case. We should say the names of the fraud police stations on social media. Put it on TikTok. Put it on WhatsApp. Put it on Facebook. Let's start naming these police stations. You name the officers, you name the times, you name what was done to you. The calls, you keep your calls and you post it. Something has to give way. We can't live like this anymore. My poster says, rise, resist and unite against gender-based violence. You see the fist is red. That fist in 1956 was the fist to freedom. But victims, women, children, LGBTQI, even the men that do not report rape. Every day when I look at that fist, I say to myself, I will wear this color. And this will be my color of defiance. When I say that we need to change the narrative, then people say, oh, so now you're political now. And it's not about that. It should be about that. It should be the X that we make for the vote. Underneath, there should be vagina. There should be anus. Underneath. So when we make that X in 2024, let's look at protecting women, children, men, and the LGBTQI. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Lucinda. I would like to conclude, I want to show this slide, but the reason I want to show it is to not. I don't want the description to make it seem the description of a victim, and it's not to just make Janelle feel okay, but the fact that someone speaks up makes them a victor. It makes someone a warrior, and I think it's very, very important that more people speak up. And obviously from my side, I encourage men to also speak up. I think it's very important that we act with integrity, so on and so forth. But the Janelle Laattoe story is a story of bravery and taking a stand and stepping forward. It may represent beaten faces, broken arms, scarred bodies, even people that didn't make it, that didn't survive. But the fact that someone like Janelle could speak up today, I honestly believe if we share these stories and we make sure that people don't just become statistics, then we have to bring about some kind of change. We have to. Something I learned, Lucinda, from you actually, you don't know it, but something I learned from Lucinda, and I'll share another story later, is that every single victim has a name, and as Janelle correctly said, it's a sister, a mother, sometimes it's a brother, a father, and it happens often. And we need to tell their stories and say their names. I want to thank you for today. Lucinda, thank you for letting us use your center, and obviously more than happy to answer questions afterwards. Thank you, everyone. Are there any questions?
Hello. Thank you so much for this. My name is Mary Ann. I'm a journalist from Ground Up News. Ian, I just wanted to ask, you mentioned that Janelle's doctorate has gone missing, and she's also just said that how much Action Society has helped her. I just wanted to find out, is the case back in court now? What's happening with the whole missing docket thing? And what kind of steps can Janelle take now that the docket is missing? And then secondly, could you please just give us some more information about how big the problem is, I'm just focusing here in Cape Town only, how big the problem is in terms of dockets going missing in cases, especially cases such as GBV.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously we have inquired formally with Delft Station already. As you saw, the response was quite poor. What we've now done is that we're going to start with a process to go the IPID route, to say that there must be some kind of an investigation to determine where the negligence happened. But you know, the troublesome thing of this is it basically means quite a bit of work needs to be done from scratch. Statements need to be redone. I mean, there's literally a whole lot of information that is just gone now. It's missing. And remember, something that's very important about this, and I want to say it very blatantly today, is that it's not just about Janelle's case. Remember that Janelle's case, for one offender that hurt so many other women, could actually have made the sentence or the punishment for that perpetrator even worse. But now justice is being denied because of one docket that went missing. So we're going to go that route. Obviously, and again, I want to emphasize that a lot of work was done by the police on this case. So it's kind of a catch-22 to them. They're hurting themselves. It's an own goal, because you're literally doing all the work, and then you end up losing the docket, and you didn't scan the docket and put it on the necessary system to keep track of it. So it just purely doesn't make sense to me.
Just a comment.
Yes.
A lot of those dockets are bought by the perpetrator.
Yeah. So, and
so it does make sense.
yes, and that has happened often. In terms of what we've experienced in the broader Cape Town region, is that dockets often go missing, not necessarily because, or we couldn't necessarily link it to a criminal offence, because we don't have that capacity to figure that out, but that because of the total chaos in which some of these detectives need to work, and the fact that we are so far behind in terms of using technology and policing, it's literally file upon docket, and they get lost. And the dockets that are meant to be scanned in general aren't scanned. A lot of the computers, let me give you an example. I opened a case at Gugulethu the other day, and a detective asked me if I could bring him the evidence on a CD. Enough said. I mean, really? Is that still the way that the police work? So it's a massive problem. It's a nationwide problem. Many of the detectives in this, let's say in the Cape Flats region, have more than 300 dockets on their tables. It's humanly impossible to really do good detective work on that. And remember, say for example, Janelle has to go to court. Now you've got a detective that really is trying hard. Let's give the detective the benefit of the doubt, okay? He or she really is trying their best. They've got 320 dockets on their table. For that detective to give feedback to every single victim is virtually impossible. It's expected and it should be done, but we can all tell each other here that it's physically impossible. They don't have phones. They don't have phones that work. They often don't have airtime on those phones, and the list goes on. So it's a big problem. I must be honest, the cases that Action Society is working with currently, this is the first docket that's gone missing on the cases that we are physically involved with. So, but obviously we hear of other cases, but unfortunately we're not always involved from the beginning, which makes it challenging to then assist.
I just also want to add a comment that for victims of gender-based violence, the Ombudsman is under, we don't actually complain with the Ombudsman. We don't ask the Ombudsman to investigate. And I recently attended a meeting, and my one question to the Ombudsman was, how many GBV cases have been reported to the police ombudsman for failure to investigate properly? And the stats were minimal. And so we have to say also to the victims that, yes, you open up a case with IPID, but also open up the very same investigation with the ombudsman.
Yes.
I also want to say to the FCS officers that has to investigate these cases with almost to zero resources, with huge caseloads, with that's one unit, and that's our specialization unit in the police services where we need to go to. Those detectives needs to work with us. In the metropole, it is bad as it is. Under-resourced unit. With our president saying over and over and over in his speeches about the high rate of gender-based violence. Let's just have a look at what's happening in rural areas. It's even worse. With vehicles, inadequate vehicles, vehicles that they cannot drive, thousands of kilometers that they have to do, and the cases fall through the crack because sometimes what the detectives need is not there because they can't scan. There's no paper. The computer is locked after 3 p.m. They can't access these offices. There's no spaces to work.
Just in terms of dignity, in a police station, some of the stations in the Cape Flats, female toilets don't have toilet seats. They don't even have toilet seats. They need to take their own toilet paper to the station every day. That's the reality that they work in. So it really is, it's a dire situation. In the Eastern Cape, I worked with a case years ago, and I know Nikki wouldn't mind sharing this. And I used to work with farm attacks a lot, and I learned from there how big the GBV crisis is, especially in some of the rural communities. It's like a forgotten community, and then especially townships in rural communities, it's like it's a forgotten space. And Nikki's case, she was shot, and after she was shot, she was raped in front of her children. And then she had to drive the perpetrator to ATM to draw money. Long story short, eventually he was arrested, prosecuted, everything. But the point is, there was zero support from local police in the Eastern Cape, not because some of them didn't want to help. They couldn't help. There was no means for them to help. They can't help. So now, and I want to give context to this. In the next 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, about 24,000 cops are going to go on pension, okay? We've got 10,000 new members coming in at the end of this year, and we've got 10,000 being trained next year. Yesterday, the Minister and the Commissioner said that most of those will be pushed into specialized units. Now you've got detective constables and constables going into specialized units with zero experience. It's also not fair to them because they are not going to have the on-the-job training that they need, and it's going to make it very difficult for them to really be successful. Now you put them into FCS, and you've got a student constable that has to investigate, for example, a matter like Janelle's with 3 other cases. But when he or she walks into the station, they say, here's your 300 dockets, good luck. How does that motivate you? I think we can continue talking. Is there another question? Sorry.
Mine is two-pronged. I'll start with Ian and I'll move to Lucinda. Ian, in terms of the work that you guys are doing, I mean, nobody can contest that it's a very important issue. But do you think that your messaging gets lost because of you and your combative relationship, what appears to be a combative relationship? Like, for instance, I read like invite here, and you see in the statement that there's nothing to celebrate. But for the millions of black women in this country whose grannies and aunts were at the union buildings, they celebrate a woman's day, they celebrate women's rights. And so while gender-based violence is a very important part of that issue of women's rights, it's not the only issue. Like things like that, and do you think that your relationship, that the work that you do could be better improved by a better relationship with the police, with Maggie, those types of things? And then to Lucinda, I was there in 2019, you were there. Do you think, I mean, okay, what do you think is the answer? What do we do? Do we shut down the country? Do we go to the union buildings? Do we go to Parliament? Do we shut the country down every day to get a response? And not only a response, the action and the response that we want and that we need.
It's a brilliant question. So I want to start with the one about nothing to celebrate. Last week I was in Mbukweni, and on Tuesday evening I spent time with junior leaders from schools in the Winelands areas to speak about challenges that young ladies and young men face in especially rural townships. And there was a matric girl there that goes to school in Mbekweni. And you know what she said to me? She said to me that by between 5 o'clock and 6 p.m. in the day, her and her friends can't be outside anymore, but that the men can still be outside because it's too dangerous for them. And if I ask any woman in here, if you feel safe walking on any of these streets when the sun sets, even throughout the day, you can be my testimony for that. They don't feel safe. Again, and this is what I said in terms of the police 3-4 weeks ago, we need to stop politicizing crime. There's great credentials, important credentials that need to be highlighted in terms of political movements, etc. And I acknowledge that completely. My fight is that today, as we sit here, someone is probably being raped in South Africa. There are going to be between 130 and 150 rapes today in South Africa. Tomorrow, another 130 to 150 rapes. And that's the fight that I want to fight, regardless of political affiliation. So I don't mean it with political disrespect, not at all. The reality that we have now is that women and children face a severe onslaught in South Africa, whether urban or rural. And the interesting thing is whether rich or poor. The difference is that in poorer communities, it's often forgotten because you become a number, because people are so heavily populated, you just become a number. Last week in New Crossroads, a lady said to me the following. We were patrolling with them, and she said, Ian, we call the police when someone gets shot, but it's not even that the police are late. They simply don't come. We end up organizing a car in the community. We pick up the victim and take the victim to a hospital. And that's the reality. In terms of the relationship with the police, ground level relationship is amazing. In fact, after what happened 4 weeks ago, many of the members on ground level, especially in the township, said, thank goodness, because we are tired of working in a dictatorship. We want our complaints to be heard. Lucinda is sitting here. She knows many of the FCS people. They are incredible people still wearing the uniform. And it's difficult for me to sit here and to name and shame, because I think it's important that we do that, and I agree with Lucinda. But the problem that I have is, unfortunately, good people are going to get hurt through us doing that. But we need to acknowledge the fact that we really have a crisis. In terms of the relationship with the Minister of Police, I'm open for any discussion. What he said after what happened, he said to me, or he said to the media, we could have done things differently. No, Mr. Minister. I wouldn't do anything differently from what I said that day, because nothing has changed since 4 weeks ago in Gugulethu. I was there last week and the week before, and all 4 vans with flat tires are still standing in the parking lot in Gugulethu station. They don't have any extra resources. So I wouldn't do that differently. In terms of the broader relationship with the police, we've made many attempts. Since Nathi Mteto was the Minister of Police, Nathi Nhleko, Fikile Mbalula, and Minister Beki Cele, we have never received a response. Every time we have to go through the civilian secretariat, and then someone will come back to us there, if they do, or we have to follow a legal route. So what we find, build a relationship on ground level, because there are amazing people trying to do so much with little resources.
I think, and thank you for your question to me. We've normalized violence in this country. We either politicize it or it's normal. So I give you an example. Your question to me is, should we shut this country down? Should we shut Lavender Hill down? You know, if I give you a response tomorrow, or not tomorrow, later on, I'll have the police at my gate. So a month ago, as a collective community, we marched through Lavender Hill with about 80 taxis. You know, we invited the Western Cape Provincial Police. We handed a memorandum to him. We handed a memorandum to the MEC for Community Safety. And there were demands. The demands was the station commander needs to go for SIBA because of the various reasons. And in addition, the members of the station wrote a letter of the conditions of how they are working. This letter was handed over. It is 4 weeks later. There's been no response from the province. None whatsoever. Zero response. There has been no intervention. And then somebody said on social media, we're going to shut Prince George Drive down 2 Sundays back. Monday morning, 40 vehicles, traffic, law enforcement, they were there from 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. So what does that tell us? Should we always engage in violence to be protected? Is this the narrative of if we want something, we should become violent? And let me give you another example. One of my staff members, she has to travel from Khayelitsha, and at 7 a.m. in the morning she walks to the taxi and a gentleman comes and says, turn around. They were robbing females along the road. They were robbing them. And if anything happened to her, and I pick up the phone and I ask, can I have a look at the CCTV camera footage? Would I get that footage in Khayelitsha? So having said this, Wesley, I don't believe in violence. And therefore, at times when I want to shut down Prince George Drive to get better service from Steenbok Police Station, I have to think of 2 things. I think of women and how they'll be impacted. I think of children and how they'll be impacted. But then I also think of the current provincial and also national leadership who is mandated, who gets paid every month with your taxpayers' money to protect us, and nothing happens. But we need to keep these people accountable, and we need to work towards the legal route and the constitution route. There are many, many families that up until today will never get the justice that you are seeking for, because they lost their daughters, their sisters, their mothers, because of lip service being paid from both spheres of government. And this is not police bashing at all, because on the ground level, we have amazing members in the South African Police Services that's really trying to serve and protect. But there's a leadership issue. There's a leadership crisis. And what we're saying is, what I'm saying, we are not advocating hard enough for the police, because the unions have failed them. The unions have abandoned them. So they cannot protect themselves and they can't protect us.
I would like to quickly just summarize the solutions, because I think it's something we might miss on top of what Lucinda said. I think otherwise it might appear like the 3 of us can moan very well.
Yeah.
But Lucinda's given the legal part of the solution, which is brilliant. In terms of the police, there are about 8 or 9 crucial solutions that need to be looked at on a national level. First of all, we all know what the opinion is in terms of the Minister of Police, so I'm not going to go into that. Then in terms of senior management in the South African Police Service, I honestly believe we need to do a skills audit from brigadier level upwards, just to start with, and determine who was appointed according to merit and who was appointed because of political affiliation. And if it was the latter, you're out. I don't know how, labor-wise, they need to sort that out, but you're out. No political affiliation within the South African Police Service, because it's caused that there's a certain political elite that seems to be above other parts of society in the country. Okay. The next part is to determine from brigadier level up who was involved in criminal activity and in any form of corruption. If they are, they need to be investigated, prosecuted, removed. And I want to make sure that a point is made or an example is set with them, because they should even be held at a higher standard than the rest of society. After that, we need specialized units returned in the South African Police Service. There's no point in TRT. We've got TRT. Speak to the majority of TRT members in the country. They will tell you that they are severely frustrated because they are more busy doing VIP protection for politicians than what they are doing TRT duties. Example, the last 3 in Bezos in the Cape Flats. Manenberg, Khayelitsha, Gugulethu, every single time, TRT was protecting politicians. That is not the job that they signed up for, and that's not what they were trained to do. So we need specialized units back. Then we need reservists in communities. South Africa, since the FIFA World Cup, lost more than 60,000 reservists. I think we've got less than 4,000 active members that can still work. And if you speak to them, most of the time, they don't have vehicles, they don't have firearms, they don't have ammunition, they don't have uniforms. Reservists haven't been trained in more than 10 years. It's an easy way and a cheap way to put some form of statutory power back in the hands of the community. So another solution. And then after that is to look after our police members. A lot of people ask, how can they help? Everyone can't help with an investigation. But I tell you, on a Saturday morning at 2 a.m., showing up at a police station with some warm soup and a few cups of coffee goes a long way. Go and support them. Go and support the members that really are trying. And I think from there, we can make a difference. But on a national level, those are the solutions that we propose. And when I speak about specialized units, it includes FCS and all the rest. It includes that. But they need to be properly resourced. Remember that in 2003, I want to conclude with that, the majority of specialized units were disbanded. Okay? Since then, there was no real replacement for most of those specialized units. The problem was, or the expectation was, that most of these crimes needed to be investigated on station level, which is impossible because the skills aren't always there, and intimidation plays a far bigger role because now you live in the same community where you're investigating an organized crime matter. And there are many examples in this area of exactly that. So it's crucial that those specialized units are beefed up and that they can play a national role in really sorting out these very serious issues.
Sorry, and with all due respect, you've missed one big part, and that's the gender equity in the South African police services.
Yes.
If you look from brigadier level up to generals, up to provincial commissioners, how many provincial commissioners in this country are women? They are 0. And this is the big thing that I want to advocate for. We need to have the gender split in the South African police service, but we should also have the equity split. We cannot come from one service to another service, and in between, if we speak that we are an inclusive country, then it's not reflecting in the hierarchy of the South African police service. So the gender equity and also the population equity should happen within that skills audit. And this is the elephant in the room that we should speak about and address. And it's nothing about racism.
And the skills are there. That's
you.
the thing. The skills are there.
Yeah.
But now you've got, say for example, let's not call names because then I'll get into trouble again. But you've got certain generals that are appointed in the name of being female, but it's not a merit appointment. It's because of other affiliations.
It's not operational.
But there are amazing women in the South African police service that do incredible work and that are good leaders that should be up there.
Operational.
It's as simple as that. So I agree with you completely. Thank you everyone. Thank you for your time. Janelle. Thank you.